Romans 2, verse 1 and 2. Therefore you have no excuse, O man, every one of you who judges. For in passing judgment on another, you condemn yourself, because you, the judge, practice the very same things. We know that the judgment of God rightly falls on those who practice such things. When we judge, we set ourselves up to be judged. In Romans 1, Paul was diagnosing the rebellion of the human heart. Now he's showing us the dangers of self-righteousness. He pivots from those who approve of people doing wrong to those who criticize people doing wrong, but yet fall short of their own standards. These are hypocrites. This is the danger, really, that comes from making following Jesus into something more about morality and rule following instead of something about trust and surrender and humility. You know, the reality is we can't keep God's laws and standards perfectly. But we go around and we tell everyone else they have to, and we give them standards. And this is actually what the Pharisees did. They made the law doable. They took the law and they turned it into over like 600 rules that they could do. Rarely everyone could do. But Jesus comes along in the Sermon on the Mount and basically says, no, the law is so impossibly high, you cannot meet it. And it almost seems hopeless, but it's not, because we know the rest of Jesus' ministry. We know the gospel, which is the fact that he met the standard, he died in our place, and we rest in that. The first concern of every believer should be themselves, to take the plank out of our own eye before we focus on the speck in our neighbors, right? Only once have you acknowledged your own sin, accepted the forgiveness for that sin, and found some freedom from that sin by believing the gospel, should you really go around trying to help other people with their sin. Because telling people you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, it doesn't really help. It might change them in the short term, but it's just going to change behaviors. It's not going to change a human heart. It doesn't give them hope. It doesn't give them the answer for what they truly need. It doesn't give them freedom, and it doesn't give them forgiveness that are found in Jesus. But if you've experienced that freedom and forgiveness, you can go to them and you can talk to them about sin from a forgiven perspective rather than a critical perspective, which is what Paul is warning us about. So love people, share truth, be with people, but be careful not to become a judge, because when we judge, we set ourselves up to be judged by the same standards, and rarely do we meet our own standards. But the good news is you don't have to, right? The good news is Jesus met God's standards for us so that we could have a relationship with him based on what Jesus did rather than what we do. And we can be forgiven, we can be saved, and we can be free. That's the news we need to be sharing with other people.